Hi, thanks for joining me today with this training session. It's titled Belonging, and it's a module that will discuss how to include children of gay and lesbian parents, but not only children of gay and lesbian parents, but all children in your program. Today's families are diverse and they come in all sizes and many configurations. As early childhood educators, this diversity challenges us to be more accepting, more responsive, and more respectful in our relationships with young children and with their families. This module is intended to address the topic of creating a sense of belonging for all families, including gay and lesbian families. The point of this module today is the hope that you as a participant will grasp the importance of representing, including, and involving all families in the social and cultural community of the program. It is hoped that you will recognize the significance of the attachment, separation, individuation process on the development of young children. And understand that children take almost all of their early social and cultural cues from their parents and other significant adults in their environment. We want you to understand the importance of including all families in the social and cultural community, and to be aware of both deliberate and non-deliberate messages about belonging in the program's written materials, the environment, and in your teaching and educational practices. A feeling of belonging is critical to every child and family's well-being. The drive to form relationships with others begins in infancy and continues throughout early childhood. These relationships help children fulfill their potential in all areas of development, their physical development, social, emotional, cognitive development. As human beings, we are driven to make connections and establish a sense of belonging. We all want to belong. We see this in newborns as they enter the world, seeing everything through their inescapable need to form attachments. Our survival and wellness are contingent upon forming bonds from which we venture forth to view and become in the world. Research shows us that even when children's physical requirements for survival, such as food and clothing and shelter, are met, children who are deprived of social connection still suffer from failure to thrive. That's where that comes from. T. Berry Brazelton once stated, "We need emotional food to secure our very existence." NACCE does in fact have a position statement that specifically responds to linguistic and cultural diversity. For optimal development and learning of all children, educators must accept the legitimacy of children's home language, respect or hold in high regard the home culture, and promote and encourage the active involvement and support of all families, including extended and non-traditional family units. That comes directly from their position statement regarding linguistic and cultural diversity. NACCE goes on to say in their position statement that to ensure each child's culture, language, ethnicity, and family structure are recognized and valued in the program. That is one of our ethical responsibilities. Children of LGBT families have a much higher risk of being in distress or being ostracized, experiencing bullying, and having adverse psychological outcomes. To address this, another important statement in the NAEYC Code of Ethical Conduct states that above all, we shall not harm children. We shall not participate in practices that are emotionally damaging, physically harmful, disrespectful, degrading, dangerous, exploitative, or intimidating to children. This principle has precedence over all others in the code. That's how important this is. As early childhood educators, we understand the importance of attachment. There are many occasions where the assumption is that the initial phase of a child's orientation into a new program, into a new classroom, is about overcoming separation from their loved ones. But what is really happening at this stage is more accurately described as forming attachments. As they develop connections or attachments to the caregivers within the early childhood environment, they become better able to separate from the family bonds that previously created the glue that held them together. Children become better able to transfer that dependency to a trusted caregiver as they find their way into the family of the classroom or the center. Young children's sense of self is tied to their sense of family. As they negotiate the attachment, separation, individualization process, they take their most salient cues of how to be and who they are from their parents. For children to form the attachment necessary to free them to explore the world of the center, they must first feel that the center welcomes them, includes, and celebrates their family. It's only in this context that they can realize their full potential. Young children learn early on who is and who isn't important. They also develop pre-prejudice by absorbing the negative attitudes and stereotypes and misinformation from the people around them. In order for a child to feel valued and included and respected and welcomed, they must know that their family is valued, included, respected, and welcomed. If the center does not include their family in both overt and covert ways, children get a subtle but a very clear message that their family somehow does not belong, and this impacts their own sense of belonging. Children are more sensitive to the social emotional currents in their environment than are adults. They might not be able to voice those sensitivities, but they feel them and they're impacted by the tone that is set by the adults who create and sustain the rhythm of the environment. Forming a family construct occurs in a social context. And for that reason, the environment becomes the shaper and the teacher. Children's initial assumptions about families are that all families are just like their own. And as they leave the world of their families and they enter the world of childcare, they come to know more about other families. Absent negative input, they see different families as just a matter of fact, like different colored houses on the block in their neighborhood. They come to know them as just different houses, but houses just the same. And beginning at around age 4, children absorb definitions of family from the attitudes of their family members and others, from the cultural and social contexts that are around them, and images available to them through toys and literature and other media. The environment of the center, both deliberately and undeliberately, creates these social and cultural constructs in verbal and nonverbal ways. Identity is shaped from the outside and constructed from the inside. It's a dynamic process that early childhood educators play a tremendous part in. Before we move on, what I'd like you to do is stop the video here and consider what you've heard so far. Consider for a moment that at some point you will have a conversation with someone else about this topic. How would you begin the discussion? Craft a statement about why this matters before returning to this video. We may, however, inadvertently give messages of inclusion rather than exclusion rather than inclusion to children of gay and lesbian parents when the early childhood environment fails to represent and talk about diverse families. Young children learn early on who isn't important. Um, and you want to consider the ways that differences are addressed in your program, both directly and indirectly, through your curriculum, through communication, and through interaction. Consider whether other families, such as single father families, grandparent-headed families, or co-parenting families, might also be included. So, what does this mean for children of lesbian and gay parents? When the early environment outside the home fails to represent imagery or conversation about their families, children come to understand themselves and their parents as invisible. Very early on, children understand belonging and the degree to which they belong in a community. Um, when the environment has no books, no conversation, no toys, and no means of representing lesbian or gay-headed families, they understand that their family exists outside the circle of those who are fully included. According to the 2012 Census Bureau, up to 14 million children under the age of 18 are being raised by LGBT families. Just as heterosexual families require childcare to enable work and want high quality early childhood education to enhance their children's development, LGBT families experience the same needs and desires for their children. However, similar to other educational institutions, the early childhood field has either held negative beliefs regarding diverse family structures or ignored altogether the unique needs of LGBT families. To serve all children, we must find ways to include all families. And some strategies for doing this include writing center non-discrimination policies that explicitly state that all families are welcome and celebrated here, including same-sex families. Write those in your family handbooks and your welcome letters that describe the different families that are part of the family-centered community. Create a family gallery, including photos of each child with his or her family, displayed in a place where conversation is likely to naturally flow. Equip classrooms with toys that offer a variety of ways to construct families for play, such as materials that allow children to self-select the groupings that have meaning for them. Displaying and reading children's books that fully represent the diversity of families, including lesbian and gay families. Conducting daily conversations with children about each child's family, who they are, and how they come together to meet one another's needs. It is important to identify specific strategies to make sure that the messages children and their families get from the early childhood environment are actually communicating inclusion. If I were to send you on a scavenger hunt to find books and posters and children's artwork, family photographs, other materials that reflect diversity and inclusion, you would discover that they're really not that easy to find. Go ahead and stop the video here for a moment and do an internet search and seek out toys and supplies and books that you might need to include all families in the classroom. Then complete the assignment that asks you to list some of these items. Think of this as your wish list. Wouldn't it be nice to have easy access to all of these materials? Go ahead and do that now. Supporting children's play offers infinite opportunities to explore assumptions and expand the horizons of their understanding of family. In dramatic play, for instance, caregivers can suggest that different kinds of families be included. One possible way to gently guide children might be to say, I see today that you're playing about a family with a father and a mother. That reminds me of some of the families of our children, like Janine and Carlo and Sarah and Ezra. Perhaps tomorrow we can play about Justin's family. Justin lives with two dads, his sister and his cat Pepe. And in talking about differences, it's important to comfortably use the language of difference, matter-of-factly using the words lesbian, gay, and terminology such as same-sex. Adds to the vocabulary that children can use to describe the world as they see it. What about the boy in the dress-up area who finds a dress and wants to wear it? In some cases, the parents are not okay with this, and they may want you to intervene. Sometimes you yourself may feel uncomfortable. The discomfort we feel is often about gender, about how girls and boys are supposed to look and behave. Think about a time you were told that you should behave or dress a certain way because you were a girl or a boy. How did you feel? Did you ever feel differently about your gender? Of course not. You still felt the same. And we need to create an environment where children can express their gender as they like and where we do not make assumptions about the meaning of children's behaviors or their choices. Lesbians are sometimes seen as women who are not behaving like women, and vice versa for gay men. These fears are often bolstered by ideas that we are taught in our families and our communities, and by the media. Sexual orientation and gender identity are challenging topics for some people. Some of you may experience discomfort. At times, it can feel like you're going against your upbringing, against your family, or even against your moral beliefs or your religion. You may be more open or less open to self-reflection, but the fact that you are working through this training session means that you are interested in providing services that are truly inclusive. We can all benefit from opening ourselves to understanding the enormous diversity that exists in the world. Regardless of your personal beliefs, all service providers have a commitment to provide respectful, relevant, and effective services to clients and to create an atmosphere that respects human rights. This is not about changing your beliefs. It's about becoming more aware so you can do a better job and create a better work environment for everyone. Most teachers who are not gay or lesbian have a high level of discomfort dealing with this issue, in part because they have a hard time separating sex from the issue of sexual orientation. They also have a hard time feeling comfortable talking about anything related to sex with young children who are not their own. When we speak about the parents of a child who has one mother and one father, no one assumes we're talking about sex. But if we speak of a child's two mommies or two daddies, all of a sudden, the topic of sex seems to have moved into the forefront. The simplest way of talking about sexual orientation with young children is not to deal with sex at all, but focus on what is visible. Some families have two mommies, some have two daddies, some have one mommy or one daddy, some have a mommy and a daddy. Teachers may not always feel competent to support children's exploration of differences effectively, so practice to perfect on this important job skill. Stop the video once again here to do another assignment. This assignment requires you to read the scenarios that are listed and create opportunities that will expand children's understanding of diversity, or to explore children's assumptions, and to record examples of missed opportunities. Go ahead and do that now. One of the best ways to incorporate knowledge and familiarity with each child's family is to find ways to include them in the activities of the school. Children and their families are well served when families play a vital role in the classroom. Encouraging family volunteering and making your center a comfortable and welcoming place for all families creates endless opportunities for children to experience sameness and difference. When children have the opportunity to form relationships with others, they come to know and value them for the ways in which they are the same as well as the ways in which they are different. Living amidst diversity diminishes the degree to which it becomes the focus. We all know this from our own experience. Our children can learn this early on before they form opinions of difference. They can classify and categorize families along with all the other things in their environment: crayons in a box, houses on the block, goldfish in a bowl, and yes, people in their world. Your next assignment is to stop here and brainstorm a list of all the ways your program welcomes or could welcome families. Then, in addition to that assignment, is to read the sample welcome letter that's provided through the classroom resources and identify how teachers could plan to have families share information about themselves with the school, the classroom, and the children. One of the first steps to creating a welcoming early childhood program is to assess what you are doing well and identify areas for growth. Let's start with communication. What about the application and other forms that families complete? Are they friendly to all families? Do they use language that, such as parent-parent, or parent-guardian rather than mother-father? The intake form is often the very first thing that people are given when they walk into your program for service. If they don't fit on the form, if there's no way to represent themselves or their family, they might feel that you're not expecting someone like them to be coming through their door. They may wonder if you are adequately prepared to serve or work with them. Design your forms in a way that is inclusive of all kinds of people and families. Use forms that explicitly make room for family configurations that do not assume male-female relationships or a two-parent model. It is helpful for LGBT families and others to let them know that you serve all kinds of families. It's important that they have this information and can then decide if this is the place for them. Do you ask families about who the important people are in their children's lives, and what do children call them? For example, if a child has two dads, are they called Daddy and Pappy? Or if a grandmother is raising a child, is she called Grandma or Nana? Do all children and families see themselves represented in letters and announcements? For example, do letters say, "Dear families, welcome to our new program year," or Please bring this letter home to your family rather than to your mommy and daddy. A welcoming environment is one that recognizes the enormous diversity that exists amongst people as well as their unique experiences and needs. We differ in terms of race, class, ability, age, lived experiences, and family structure. Some of us grew up in large families. Some of us were raised by one or two parents or three parents. Some were raised by grandparents and some by caregivers other than parents. Some of us were conceived within heterosexual relationships, some of us in the context of LGBT relationships, and some people plan to parent on their own. Building a warm, welcoming environment for people across these ranges of diversity requires ongoing thought, insight, and consideration. How welcoming is your environment? Are there photos in your common area and in classrooms of families at work and at play? Do they depict the many ways that children and families interact with each other and engage with the world? Do photo displays promote inclusive definitions of families? For example, are there photos of adopted families, LGBT-headed families, grandparent-headed, and multiracial families? Do images show people who represent diverse races, ethnicities, economic status, physical abilities, ages, family structures? Do posters, children's artwork, children's book displays, and photos of your real families, including the staff, depict the many ways that people work, play, and live as families? Is there a place to display a family gallery that includes every family, including staff in your program? Are these photos visible at an eye level for children and placed where families can also see them? Are they part of ongoing day-to-day conversation? Visual representations signal to people walking into your space that you are aware of and that you welcome diversity amongst individuals and families. A picture is worth 1,000 words. What about your curriculum and your learning centers? In the block area, do figures of families and people represent different cultures and families? Are there multiple sets of family figure dolls so that children can select or create a grouping that most looks like their own family? Are figures stored in arrangements that allow children to make selections that represent their family structures rather than arrangements that may only represent one kind of family, such as only having a father, mother, child, baby? In the dramatic play area, are there props that encourage multiple ways of playing family or other imaginative play? Are children encouraged to use all of the different props and dress-up materials? In circle and group time, do you talk about different kinds of families? Do you address name calling and hurtful behaviors and teach positive social reactions? Do you communicate with children about things they have in common and their differences? In the writing area, are there photos and prompts that encourage children to write or tell stories about all kinds of people and families? Are children's stories shared with other children in ways that encourage respectful exploration of each other's experiences and ideas? In the Art Center, are there materials and opportunities for children to express their ideas about themselves, their families, and their experiences? Are children encouraged to share their work and ideas with others in ways that invite conversation and exploration? In the music area, is there a thoughtful selection of songs that represent diversity and broaden children's exposure to different kinds of music? Can children identify with the people and the experiences that they sing about? Can they comfortably discover and discuss differences? Do you change the lyrics of common children's songs to be more inclusive? For example, Five Little Monkeys. Do you always sing Mama Called the Doctor, or do you change it up? Papa called the doctor, or Grandma called the doctor. In the library, do the children's books that you display and read represent different kinds of families? Do books that are used for discussion with children allow them to share their own experiences, ask questions, and explore the many ways of being? Do you have books that show diverse cultures? Are children engaged in making their own books, especially My Family books? Are these displayed with the other books in the library and sturdy enough to be handled regularly by children? In all that we do with young children, we have opportunities to explore ideas and ask questions. Children have stories to tell every day. Seeing the world through their own lens and through the experiences of others prepares them to live in a diverse world and see themselves and everyone else as belonging. Often, educators voice concerns regarding discussions of differences, especially when related to same-sex or lesbian/gay families. It is expressly for this reason that center policies and language need to be explicitly inclusive. The discomfort around the use of accurate language and inclusivity is often couched in the fear of being accused of promoting homosexuality by parents whose views may differ. This is an unfortunate misunderstanding. When we talk about children's families, we're talking about relationships. We understand that children's sense of belonging directly relates to their perception of the degree to which the family belongs. When we speak to children about the most important relationship they have, that of their family, we're not talking about sexuality. We're talking about who takes care of them and to whom they belong. We very naturally discuss and celebrate these relationships with children from other families if we believe that it is every child's right and our responsibility to belong, then we must be committed to creating that same sense of belonging for everyone. If we know that inclusion of their family is the means through which children establish their belonging, then we have an obligation to facilitate and ensure that. In responding to the questions that may arise from other parents, we can simply respond, we include your child's and all of our children's families into the culture of our classroom. Consider convening a task force that includes parents, teachers, and administrators and other stakeholders to discuss and agree upon accurate language to use about diverse families. Many variables will need to be considered, including, for example, the social environment of the program, your staff, family understanding of, and experience with diversity. It is important to pay attention to the words and the language that we use. Words can empower people and they can also wound. Remember, people identify the words that work best for them to talk about their sexual orientation or gender identity. It is okay to respectfully ask someone what term or pronoun they prefer and whether or not a specific term works for them. Words and language are changing all the time. Words are used differently and mean different things in various cultures and communities. It's hard to learn all the right language. We will make mistakes. Everyone does. All we can do is apologize and keep learning. Your attitude and comfort level are more important than the specific language you use. Regardless of the words we choose, nonverbal communication and tone of voice expresses emotions, opinions, and attitudes. We need to think about how we speak to each other and ensure that our professional tone is one of respect and interest. Mix your comments to children so that they do not always reinforce gender stereotypes. Um, for example, compliment boys on their outfits and compliment girls on their strength. Avoid dividing children on the basis of sex, girls' lines and boys' lines. Avoid assuming that children's skills will be or are developed solely on the basis of sex. The assumption that girls will learn to read before boys, or that boys will learn math better than girls, or that only certain skills need to be fostered in either girls or boys. Encourage boys and girls to play together. Encourage and support all children in a diverse range of activities and ways of being. Read stories that include, or you can change them to include, strong female characters. Nurturing boys. A diversity of young people involved in a wide range of activities, and adults in a range of professions that are not always gender stereotypes. Most of us use very gendered language without even realizing it. The language of parenting tends to be gendered, with the assumption often made that primary parents are women. Programs that focus on moms leave out all men, straight, bisexual, gay, transgender. Now that trans men are becoming more public about becoming parents through pregnancy, the traditional language of childbirth, for example, the pregnant woman, women-centered care, etc., doesn't always fit anymore. Some people have instead started to say the pregnant person. Changing language that has been used so widely for so long can be challenging, but not as difficult as one might think. Practice moving away from the term mom and using less gendered terms like parents and pregnant person. Change the words to songs like we mentioned earlier. Instead of mommies on the bus, make it parents on the bus. The questions you ask when someone comes through your door signals to them your openness to all kinds of people and families, and will help them decide if it is safe to disclose their sexual orientation and their gender identity to you. Use of non-biased, inclusive language and open-ended questions will help to create an environment that allows people to tell you about themselves and their families if they choose. Many of us feel like we are accepting of diversity of all kinds, yet our policies, procedures, and written materials might not always reflect this acceptance. A good place to start is by crafting a non-discrimination policy that reflects the program's view of inclusion. Work with teachers, parents, and other stakeholders to draft and approve a policy that spells out your program's acceptance of diversity. It is our children who will change the world. When we expose them to new experiences, ideas, and new expectations, we actively participate in creating that change. It's the most precious gift that we give ourselves and the children and the families in our care. So thanks for joining me today. Be sure to complete the remaining assignments in this class, and then remember to email me and let me know that you're finished so that I can send you your certificate via email. Thanks and goodbye.